Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Fifth Meeple. We are a group of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. I'm your host, Chris, the intellectual introvert, and I'm joined today by the goofy noob.
Hey, everyone, it's Daniela.
And the collector.
Hey, this is David.
If you're listening from anywhere in America, and maybe even if you're not, you know that college basketball is in the midst of determining their champion in a little tournament they like to call March Madness. Well, we got caught up in the hype and decided to stage a little tournament of our own, pitting all of the Battle of the Funnest winners from our previous episodes against each other in a tournament we'd like to call Meeple Madness. We'll face them off 2x2 until only one game remains, claiming the Meeple Madness title in the ultimate survival of the funnest. So we're going to take all those previous winners and whittle them down to that one ultimate champion. For each head-to-head matchup, we'll compare both games in 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. We'll each choose which game we think outdoes the other in each category. The game that gets the most votes wins the category, and the game that wins the most categories wins the battle and moves on to the next round in our tournament. We have a total of 10 games, and I needed to see them in some way in order to fill out the bracket, so I looked at how they performed in their original battle and gave them a score based on percentage of votes, then multiplied that percentage by their current BGG rating. Now, was that a good method? I don't know. Probably wasn't, but I did it anyway, and in the end, here are the 10 games in our Meeple Madness tournament. Taking the first seed is Heat, Pedal to the Metal, that defeated Rallyman Dirt in order to get here. Planet Unknown is the second seed, defeating the Isle of Cats. Trekking the World is our third seed, beating Ticket to Ride Europe to get here. And at our fourth seed is the Quacks of Quedlinburg, which defeated Longshot, the dice game, in our very last episode. Welcome To takes the 5 seed, defeating Railroad Inc. to get here. The Crew, Mission Deep Sea, is our 6th seed, defeating Cat in the Box in a close one. Our 7th seed was It's a Wonderful World, which defeated Seven Wonders, which is kind of interesting that it's the 7th seed as it comes out, which clearly means my seeding method was accurate. The 8th seed is Horrified, defeating Betrayal at House on the Hill. 9th seed is Cascadia, defeating World Wonders to get here. And finally, the 10th seed is Modern Art, defeating Raw in the Battle of the Auction Games. Any thoughts, guys, before we start out here on that seeding and the 10 games as we go in?
Yeah, so that's interesting, Chris, how you got to that seeding.
That's one way to put it.
I didn't know what kind of formula you were going to use to get here. So that's definitely interesting. All these games, looking at the names of them and kind of where they're seated and what the battles are going to be today, I'm looking forward to it. I think there's some interesting matchups here, definitely some genres that are crossing, that are totally unrelated. So it should be a good battle format. How about you, Daniela?
Yeah, I think it's going to be utter chaos, and I'm here for it. I like it. Good job, Chris.
All right, we'll introduce each game and touch briefly on how they play as they show up in the bracket. So let's get this party started. All right, our first 2 matchups are the preliminary rounds to whittle us down to 8 games. These are the bottom 4 seeds trying to earn their way into the big boys bracket. Our first matchup, we have the number 7 seed, It's a Wonderful World, going up against the number 10 seed, Modern Art. It's a Wonderful World is a hand management game and set collection game based in a dystopian future. Each round starts with players drafting a card from their hand and passing the remainder to an adjacent player, continuing until all cards have been drafted. Players then decide which cards to use for generating resources and which to use to initiate projects that can be completed using those resources. Some projects generate more resources while others score points in a variety of ways, and after 4 rounds, the player with the highest score wins the game. It's a Wonderful World has a BGG rating of 7.7 and got here in episode 10. Modern Art is an auction game where players take turns auctioning off paintings from their hand. Each card identifies the name of the painter as well as the type of auction that must be used. At the end of each round, players must sell all of the paintings they purchased, with the value of the paintings determined by the popularity of the painters in the current as well as all previous rounds. The player who amasses the most money after 4 rounds wins the game. Modern Art has a 7.5 rating on BGG and won its right to be here in episode 4. All right, guys, so let's get them in the ring and start talking about these 2 games against each other. It's a Wonderful World against Modern Art. We're going to start with theme and production. Daniela.
Ooh, I'm going to have to go with, I think, Modern Art. I think just them taking different artists and putting them out there. The theme was kind of interesting. I like the little idea of having different museums where everything was. We all kind of played on that a lot. So I think that one wins it for me. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, for me, I think this is a great example of why this is going to be so interesting because these are two very, very different games, right? And already I'm thinking, man, how do I adjust here? But I think for theme and production, I'm actually going to go with It's a Wonderful World. I remember talking about the fact that, hey, it's a space game, and even just silly things like the cubes really felt right to us there. Modern Art's pretty cool as well. It was a tough one for me, but It's a Wonderful World right now for me. David.
Yeah, so this one, I guess I get to be the deciding factor. So there's one game that I think had a major flaw, and I'm going to base my rating off of this. I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful World for my vote because Modern Art, I just cannot stand the little player shields. And for that reason, I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful World. Might not be popular, but I do think the components for It's a Wonderful World are just a little bit better, and I do like the theme as well.
All right, so It's a Wonderful World wins 2-1 over Modern Art for theme and production, but we've got 4 more categories left, and the next one is mechanisms. David, I'm coming right back to you for mechanisms.
Yeah, so this one is it's interesting because the mechanisms are very different. You know, I just think that the game that stands out to me in my mind when I think about these two and I compare them in my head is Modern Art. I feel like, you know, just stands out. I think the mechanisms for that one are super simple as far as what you do, but yet the variety of auctions you get while you're playing this game sets a little bit apart from It's a Wonderful World for me when it just comes to straight mechanisms that I like and how they're implemented in a game. So on to you, Daniela. What do you think?
I'm going to have to go opposite and go with It's a Wonderful World for this one because I did not like how Modern Art, I do not like the auction style of game. And for me, I liked building my hand. I liked that drafting. I liked getting the cubes. I liked all those components that It's a Wonderful World offered me. So how about you, Chris?
Yeah, so now it's my turn to break the tie, and I'm actually going to go with Modern Art. Way back in the episode we talked about this, I mentioned how, hey, this is really interesting mechanism here, and I feel like that when you look at It's a Wonderful World, there are a lot of games that do what It's a Wonderful World does. I don't feel like there's a lot of games that do what Modern Art does. It's just such an interesting take, the way you're kind of influencing in so many different ways and how hard it is sometimes to get your head around that. So I'm going to go with Modern Art, which means Modern Art takes mechanisms at a 2-1 count as well. We'll talk about value for your time as the next category. I'll start on that one, and I'll make this brief. When we talked about It's a Wonderful World, one of the things we said was we felt like maybe it went a little longer than, well, we felt like it needed one more round, but at the same time, it felt longer than it actually was. Whereas Modern Art, we had a blast doing that. Maybe because of the way we played the game, we would always make up names for the different paintings and had a lot of fun doing that. But I really enjoyed that aspect of it, so I'm going with Modern Art for value for your time. Daniela.
Even though, you know, It's a Wonderful World needed more rounds and we all agreed on that, that's the game that for me, would want to play and would put money into a game to buy that one. So for me, it's going to be It's a Wonderful World. Modern Art, overall, okay, you got to get the right people to play with. But if you don't have that game can seem like it's long and arduous for me. So, David, how about you?
Ooh, this one's tough. Value for time. You know, even though we said it took a while, I guess, for It's a Wonderful World, you know, to get through it when we were playing it against Seven Wonders. I felt like Seven Wonders was the faster game, you know, when we got to it. When I think about Modern Art, I do have to take Daniela's opinion on this. If you don't play with the right players, I could see it carrying on maybe a little bit long, you know, especially if some players just aren't into that genre. Where It's a Wonderful World, I know how many set turns are going to be. You know, they tend to go really fast and they flow as far as, you know, hey, we're going to do this step, we're going to do this step, and we're just going to keep cranking it. Even though I think it needs another round, I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful World on value for time. Probably because in some ways, I think it's too short. I think it does need another round, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, so It's a Wonderful World then takes value for your time 2-1. Let's go on to replayability then. Daniela.
So replayability, I do believe both of these games have their good moments in them, and I believe that with the right mechanism that everybody likes, you're going to want to play the games over and over again. This one is hard. I will say with replayability, I know I'm on this train, but I'm going to say for me, It's a Wonderful World. I'm not really going to go with anybody else's opinion here. This is what Daniela likes. And as the new person, the goofy noob, that's what I'm going with. I guess it's just personal for me. So how about you, Chris?
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't come to me because I'm not sure what to do here on this with replayability. And what I'm struggling with is when I think of Modern Art, again, we had a lot of fun with the names of the cards, for example, the names of the paintings. But I feel like if you're playing with the same people, that might ultimately then be, okay, yeah, here's Whippy Dip again, and it becomes less replayable. But at the same time, It's a Wonderful World. I do think, well, there's just certain mechanisms, and you take it where you do. I still feel there are a lot of different games that I can get what I get from It's a Wonderful World. I can get them here, I can get them elsewhere, whereas I'm only getting the modern art experience from modern art. That gives a better replayability factor for me because I'm not getting it anywhere else. So each time I play it, it's like, this isn't like anything else. I'm going with modern art. David.
Ooh, put me on the spot. I was really hoping you wouldn't do that. I also think this is a tough decision. For replayability, what game, not necessarily do I want to play necessarily more, but what game do I think has more replayability, more depth to it? I do agree with Chris. I think that, both games, if I play with the same players, and maybe, most game groups, I'm going to take it from this perspective. Most game groups, you have the same 4 to 5 people that you're playing with week in and week out. And so, as much as I love modern art, I do think that there is just a little bit more replayability. If I'm playing with the same game group, over and over again, I think there's a little bit more on It's a Wonderful World. And so for that factor, if you look at it from that very narrow scope, I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful World.
Okay, so It's a Wonderful World takes the replayability category as well. The final one is fun factor. David, I'm going to kick it right back to you.
Yeah, so for fun factor, I don't think this is as hard for me. I really like modern art for the fun factor, so I'm going to vote that way. And part of the reason is because the group that we play with particularly, really makes this game stand out with the, we all try to take the personalities of the museums that we're representing, and when we put stuff for auction, we're always, renaming the artwork, to fit what we were trying to get the other people to bet on. And so for that reason, the fun factors in the games, when I think about it, there's a game that really stands out to me when I think about modern art, but not necessarily when it comes to It's a Wonderful World. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with modern art. To Daniela.
So I'm going to actually switch it up here and go with modern art as well, because when I think about it, kind of as everybody's touched on, you get the right group of people playing this game and it is fun. We are laughing, we're having fun, we're passing the gavel, we're doing the auction thing, we're all taking on the personality of our museums that we're doing. Get the right people to play this game, it's fun. It's a Wonderful World. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. We're kind of looking around, we're kind of going, scratching our head going, oh, I should have done A, B, and C, and you really didn't. It's a little bit more introverted, introspective when you're looking at it. So not as much interaction. If I'm sitting down and I want to play a game and I want to have fun, I'm going to go with modern art. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going with modern art as well. I am that introverted guy, and so it's kind of weird for me, but at the same time, I think about modern art, and I smiled a lot every time we play that game, just maybe because of the way we play it, but I have a lot of fun ultimately playing that game, so I went with modern art as well, which means modern art takes the fun factor, but It's a Wonderful World wins 3 of the categories and ultimately moves on in our Meeple Madness tournament. All right, our second preliminary round has our number 8 seed, Horrified, going up against our number 9 seed, Cascadia.
Horrified is a co-op survival game where you and your hero friends work together to fight off classic movie monsters before they take over your town. You can play against any combination of 2 to 4 monsters, moving around the town, collecting items, and performing various tasks. Each monster has its own unique puzzle to solve, and in order to win, you need to defeat them all before the terror level rises too high and the whole town flees. This is currently rated at 7.7 on BGG, and it was the winner of episode number 2. It's going up against Cascadia. Cascadia is a tile drafting, landscaping building game set in the U.S. Pacific Northwest. On each turn, players draft a landscape tile, showing one or more of 5 different habitats, along with a corresponding animal token. After adding the tile to their landscape, the animal is placed in a habitat that can support it. Players score points based on the largest continuous region for each of the habitat types, as well as for each animal type as defined by a series of animal goal cards. The player who scores the most points becomes one with nature and wins the game. It's currently rated an 8.0 on BGG and was the winner of episode number 9.
All right, guys, both of these games are relatively light, I think, speaking, but they're also very, very different games. So I think this can be an interesting one as well as we get into our battle mechanics here. We'll start with theme and production. We got Horrified against Cascadia. And Daniela, I'll start with you, theme and production on these.
All right. So again, as Chris just kind of mentioned, totally different games. So it's going to be a little bizarre to pin these up against each other. But I think for me, again, personally, I'm going to kind of go on these on personal notes. I think theming production is going to have to be Horrified. Horrified, I remember the coloring on this. I remember the monsters. I remember the mini puzzles inside of the game. I remember just a lot of what was taking place. It was a little heavier than Cascadia for sure. Both not like super light, but overall, I like that kind of theme. I like those. I think we played like the American monsters. And so we were kind of looking through that. I don't know. I just felt like there was a lot of camaraderie when we were playing that. So for me, theme and production, that was fun. How about you, David?
Yeah, so when we're going for theme, Horrified versus Cascadia, I think about both of the box covers. I think they're both iconic. I can see Horrified in my head right now. Cascadia, has been out there forever. You could just look at it and you just know from far away what that game is. But as I guess it comes down to it, I think Horrified's artwork probably stands out a little bit more than Cascadia. There's so many nature games. I don't know, if there's as many, monster games. I could, there are, but I could just see Horrified's box cover in my head. So for that reason, I'm going with the theme. I'm going with Horrified, just for the theme it invokes throughout the game too. I feel like I'm in the set, trying to do what they're asking me to do. To Chris.
Yeah, I think that both of these games do this really well. And so I think as we're picking one over the other, they're both really good at theme and production. I'm going with Horrified as well. I'm thinking back to when we were playing the game. One of the comments that we had as we were talking about it afterward is, "Oh, those silly villagers! Why are they even in the game? They just come out and die." Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's what happens in a game, right? Yeah. Or in a real movie, you got to protect the villagers, and I agree. There's a lot of nature based. I think there's a lot of monster fighting ones, but not necessarily in this way. And I really enjoyed the Horrified experience from that standpoint. So I'm going to go with Horrified as well, which is a clean sweep in theme and production. We'll go to mechanisms now. Horrified versus Cascadia. David.
Yeah. So for mechanisms, we have a co-op versus, a tile drafting and kind of animal placement game, where you're building your own map. For me, when I compare the two together, I'm not the biggest fan of co-ops unless it's done super well, and it's something that I really have to like. So for this reason, and I think that Cascadia's mechanics are just really sweet. I think they're, I always talk about flow and like how easy it is to click in your head. And for that reason, I really do like Cascadia in this way. But, if you like co-ops, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but I don't like co-ops as much. So I'm going with Cascadia on this. We'll go back to Chris.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little worried because I really like Cascadia a lot, and I'm finding myself putting the second vote for Horrified here on this category just because I love Cascadia's mechanisms. I love that they're simple. There's a lot of replayability in there as well, but we'll talk about replayability later. For mechanisms, each of those monsters has its own little puzzle to solve. Each of them has its own little tasks to do, and I enjoy that a lot. I'm going with Horrified. Danielle.
So I personally really like co-ops, but I really like tile and drafting and placement as well. So I really like a lot of the polyomino games that we've played. I like a lot of that style as I grow and learn a little bit more. But I think I'm going to have to go with Horrified on this because I need a rematch. And Chris and I are going to go back to that mummy and we're going to figure out the scarabs and go back through there and do that. I think that one just calls me as far as we played Zombie Side. We played a couple other things that we got our butts whooped in a number of these co-ops, and I'm determined to do super well on something. And I really want to find the right people to play with on those games. I think we've been fortunate and lucky to have good people to play with, but definitely I'm looking for a win in that. So that's my vote there.
All right, so Horrified takes mechanisms as well 2-1, which is a little bit horrifying to me because I'm beginning to think Cascadia, who I thought was going to be the dark horse and make it all the way to the finals, may not make it out of the first round. But we'll see. Value for your time is our next category. I'll start that one, and I'm going to go with Cascadia here. It's a relatively quick game. You're constantly doing something, even when it's not your turn, because you're figuring, okay, what's left? There's a lot of things to do there. I have fun every time I play it. Horrified could go a little bit long. I think it's close again, but I'm going to go with Cascadia. David.
Yeah, so for this one for me, it's going to definitely be a Cascadia on this one. I never really think about the time when I'm playing this game. I always, when I'm in it, I'm always like, oh, it's over. Versus Horrified, which, I tend to think some co-ops, if they're not played properly, tend to go a little bit long. I think this game has some examples where, if your character is just getting the crap beat out of them, which I may or may not have had before, it's not as fun because your character doesn't have the weapons or the powers that, other characters have. And so for that reason, I think Horrified can go along. So I'm going with Cascadia on this one. To Daniela.
So this is going to be a clean sweep for this category because I'm going to go with Cascadia as well. I know where I stand when I'm playing Cascadia. I know how many rounds are next. I know kind of what everybody's doing. Horrified, for me, can either end too fast or take too long, kind of as David was saying. Depends on who you're kind of playing with. But if you don't know what you're doing and all the monsters come out and everybody's done, there's 20 minutes and you're done, and it's like not satisfying at all. Cascadia has a great pace and time to it. And I like knowing where I'm at in a game. So Cascadia is going to win that for me.
All right, so a clean sweep for Cascadia in value for your time, 3-0 there. We'll move on to replayability, and Daniela, I'm coming right back to you.
So I think with Cascadia, I've played this a handful of times now. I don't not like it. If it was on the table, I absolutely would go and play it. But I feel like I know each time I sit down kind of what's going to happen. I've played a number of the different goals on Cascadia, so I kind of know where I stand. We all know we hate the foxes. We don't know what their purpose is, but at the same time, I think replayability. I've wanted to get Horrified back to the table a number of times, and maybe if I play this more often, I won't like it. But I'm going to go with Horrified just because, again, I want to complete all those different puzzles and the mini puzzles. I want to ignore the blind man or the invisible man. We all hated him as well, but I want to get that back to the table and complete a really good game with that. So I'm going to go with that for replayability. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, so replayability coming into this, I was thinking, well, it's going to be Horrified. There's 5 different monsters in there. You can pair them up, any combination of 2, 3, or 4. But then I like to do math. And so I decided, well, let me do the math and say, well, even just in the base game, let alone the expansion, there are 5 different animals and 5 different cards for each animal. And so if you look at, okay, how many different combinations are there? That's 3,125 different combinations you can play before you get the same game again. And so, yeah, but still, I mean, I agree partly with you, but when you start to get especially into some of the D and the E cards, those are a pretty complex animal scoring at times. Really different game than when you're just playing with that first set of cards, and you get a lot of replayability out of it for that. I think Horrified could easily have taken this for me, but I'm going to go with Cascadia just for the vast numbers once I really break it down. David, coming to you, replayability.
Yeah, so for me on the replayability, this is an interesting category because I could see both points of view here that are coming at me. Totally different games, and how they operate and kind of, what they do. As far as me, when I look at Cascadia, the replayability on it, like Chris was saying, there are so many different goal cards, but I also think, I look around, the more I play it, I used to think it was a face down, kind of more solitary game, but the more I play it, it's more of a face up game, probably because I know the game so well that I'm looking around and I'm saying, hey, what tile would help me the most and what animal, but also, what's my best move for the person drafting next to me, or where's the table going, is everybody kind of leaning towards one animal over the other, is there an opportunity to go the other way from people? And so when I look at the game from that sense, I haven't gotten bored with it yet. So where I look at Horrified, and I think there's a lot of replayability, they have a lot of monsters, there's a lot of cool stuff there, but I think it can maybe get samey after you play those monsters and you defeat them. I think maybe part of the challenge, Daniela, that we're having is like when you don't beat stuff, then it's like, oh, we got to keep playing. But, once we defeat all those monsters, I think in our heads we'll be like, oh, well, we've done this game and we can put it back in its box and get the new edition of Horrified with 5 new monsters that we have to beat. And so for that reason, I think Cascadia will hit my table more. And so replayability wise, I'm going with Cascadia.
As an aside, there are a lot of fan-made monsters out on BGG. I've tried a couple of them. They're not that bad either. So if it does start to feel a little samey, you print a couple of those out, and they're pretty good.
That's cool.
Cool.
All right, so Cascadia takes that one 2-1, which means we are now sitting 2-2 in our battle of the funnest here. And we're going to finish with the fun factor, which is always important if you're going to play a game. Hopefully it's fun. We've got Horrified versus Cascadia for the fun factor. David, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I'm going to make this easy. I already voiced my opposition to co-ops. I do like playing with you guys. That's what makes co-ops fun. But in this case, I'm just going to go straight up with Cascadia. It's a game that if I see it at a table, and I'm just going to play it just because I know it's fast. I know what I'm doing. And I like the challenge every time of, what's coming out, the randomness, how do you mitigate it, with the bag pulls and everything like that. So keep it easy. I'm going with Cascadia. I'm going to turn it over to Daniela. What do you think?
All right, so this is going to go back to kind of like my previous discussion. If I'm sitting around at a table and I want to just throw a game on the table and I want to play and I want to have fun, I'm probably going to go with Cascadia on this, because there's a lot of times that we are sitting around and there is interaction enough that we're all kibitzing on the same animals or talking about different things or not talking about animals that we don't want and conversing on that. And we're kind of looking around. It's a good game, I think, to get to the table, to have fun with and be, done in a reasonable amount of time. With Horrified, I want the right people that I'm sitting down with. I want to be serious about the game that we're playing and try and get through the puzzles and work for it. So it's a little bit more serious tone for me. So for that, I'm going to choose Cascadia. How about you, Chris?
All right. Well, thank you for making it easy for me, because now my vote doesn't matter, because I'm sitting there thinking, man, we had a lot of fun playing Horrified, but at the same time, when I think about, okay, but if I'm sitting here and saying I want to play a game, which game am I going to? I'm probably going to Cascadia first. And so I'm going to go with Cascadia. I have a lot of fun with it. If somebody pulls out Horrified, I'm going to that table as well. Doesn't matter to me. I'm having fun with either one of these, but if I had to pick one, I would go with Cascadia. And so despite the strong start by Horrified, Cascadia comes from behind and wins it 3-2 in that Battle of the Funnest and moves on to round 2.
All right, so we are through 2 rounds of our Meeple Madness. We want to know what we're getting right and what we might not be. And if you have any comments on that, we'd love to hear from you guys. If you'd like to send us an email to thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. Also, before we get too much further, we want to thank everyone out there for listening and ask that you take a second just to hit the subscribe button so you never miss one of our shows. We'd love to have you guys follow us on Instagram at Fifth Meeple, join our BGG Guild, or check us out on our website at thefifthmeeple.com. Finally, we'd really just appreciate it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening to us. And of course, tell your friends about us. And once again, we thank you guys for listening.
All right, so Cascadia took out Horrified in the first round, and for that, they get to move on and face the number 1 seed, Heat, Pedal to the Metal. We've already talked about Cascadia a little bit, but Daniela, tell us what Heat's all about.
All right, Heat Pedal to the Metal is currently a 8.1 on BGG, and you can find more about this episode as we discuss it further in episode 5 that we have. So Heat Pedal to the Metal is a hand management race simulation game. Players shift gears to increase or decrease the number of cards they play from their hand each round, with the total value of the cards determining their speed and therefore how far around the track they may move. Go too fast around a curve and your engine heats up, adding unproductive cards to your hand and hindering your ability to negotiate the track. The player who crosses the finish line first takes the checkered flag and wins the game.
All right, thanks, Daniela. So again, 2 very different games here. Both, I think, really good games and games that are pretty popular out in the community. So this should be an interesting one as well. Heat versus Cascadia, starting with theme and production. Daniela, since you described that for us, why don't you go first?
All right, so theme and production, I actually really like racing games. We've played a couple here. We've played Downforce. We've played Flamme Rouge. I really like those games. So for me, I'm going to go with Heat. Pedal to the Metal, because I do like that overall theme. Even though I love hiking, I love all the national parks, I love all that kind of stuff, I really like this racing style of game. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Cascadia. I'm not a big car racing guy, but I did have fun with Heat when we played it. But Cascadia, maybe the theme speaks to me a little more, but also I felt like when you think of the components, Cascadia is relatively basic, but they're nice hex tiles. The animal tokens are pretty well done wooden tokens. And I felt like, while Heat gives you some pretty cool boards, I think there's 4 different courses you can race just in the base game. It's an interesting difference between that and then the cars are kind of little chintzy things. I felt like the player boards are just mats. They're not even cardboard boards. And so I think Cascadia takes it for me. David, break our tie.
Yeah, so just like in the other games that we have been playing, I also do have a little space in my heart for racing games. And I do like racing games, and we play a lot of them. And, the theme and production, there's a lot of animal games out there. No offense to animal games. I do like them too. But in this case, I'm going to go with Heat on this one. I'm going to leave the suspense on the thing. I just think Heat, the artwork on it, I just think it stands out to me as far as even from other racing games that are in the genre. And, for that very reason, I just, the artwork and the way it looks when it's on the table, just, when I come into a room, I'm like, I want to play that game. So that's where I'm going.
All right, so Heat takes it 2-1 for theme and production, winning the first category. We'll move on to mechanisms now. David, back to you.
Yeah, so as far as mechanisms go, Heat is definitely like you're drawing cards, you're trying to, figure out when you want to play Heat, where, what you're kind of playing down number-wise onto, as far as what cards you're flipping over to move your car up. But for whatever reason, the mechanisms Cascadian, I talked about it earlier when it was going up against Horrified, I just like the simplicity of taking something, placing something, but yet with that simplicity, all the complexity that comes with it as your landscape and your animals start to build on itself. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Cascadia on mechanisms. To Daniela.
I am going to, no thought about it, go straight to Cascadia on this one, because with Cascadia, it is that simple tile drafting. You pick up, you place it, you put it down. There were numerous things in Heat that I did not appreciate, especially the player card and the symbolism on that was a little bit just too much to know what to do and what order to do different things in, which frustrated me. And you can go back and listen to our episode again, episode 5. You'll hear my frustrations with that game overall with turning the corners and things like that again, just didn't appreciate. I wanted to appreciate it. I just don't. And so, Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I think I might surprise myself a little bit here, but trying to stick to the category, I think Heat has some really cool mechanisms in it. Some of them are I mean, gosh, I think we still have players that we played with. Maybe one of them sitting next to me now that still doesn't quite understand how does those turns work again, and what do I have to do there? But I do think that's an interesting mechanism to work in there. The whole Heat management, I do feel that this is. It's not a deck building game, but it's certainly a hand management game, right? And that's not usually a fun thing for me. I thought once I figured that out, though, it worked for me. So I'm actually going to go with Heat, but it's still a little bit too cool to take over Cascadia, who's going to take that category. So Cascadia wins that one. It's 1-1. Moving into category number 3, Heat versus Cascadia, value for your time. I'm going to start with this one. I'm going with Cascadia. I think once you learn Heat, it doesn't take that long. The first game we played, I felt like it took longer than it should. But Cascadia, I feel like I can always count on that game taking a certain amount of time regardless, and I enjoy it the whole way through. I'm going to go with Cascadia. I think that's enough said for me. Daniela, back to you.
Yeah, I think with the value for your time, this is one of those games that Chris I've sat around the table numerous times where he's taught other people, new players, players who've played it 2-3 times, just reintroducing it. So value for your time is going to go to Cascadia just because every single time we play it, you're within a couple minutes of each other, and it's good to bring to the table. As far as when we played Heat, it's not long, again, like we were kind of saying. You can get around it fast, but the value for your time, if you're losing and you don't have that catch-up mechanism to finally get your car in tow with the other players, or have that moment where you're drafting and you're working that correctly, it can be a really long game. David, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with what's been said before. I'm going with Cascadia just for the very fact of what Daniela was saying. If you have 1 or 2 players when you're playing Heat and they somehow, drop out of that main pack, it is very hard for them to catch up, making that game extremely long. Where I feel like in Cascadia, you're all just, doing one thing at a time. Everybody's revealing their 5th tile and we're going around. And you're always, even if you're not in it, you think you're in it because you don't actually know the full score to until the end of the game. Where with Heat, you kind of know your spot. I mean, first car that crosses the line wins the race. So you kind of always know where you're at just because it is a racing game. But for those factors, I think if you drop behind, that game could be really long, especially because I don't think it has enough catch-up mechanics yet for those players to really, really come back.
Yeah, you get a few turns behind, maybe even just one turn behind, but if you get more than one turn behind, you're done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Cascadia had a clean sweep on that one. Value for your time. So Cascadia is up 2-1 in this current Battle of the Funnest over Heat, but now we go to replayability. Coming right back to you, David.
Ooh. My gut's telling me to go with Heat. I was going to say Cascadia, but I think my gut's telling me to go with Heat, probably because I know that there's a ton of maps out there that I haven't played yet, and there's a bunch of different modules that I've yet to really tackle, and I think they could add a lot to the game with like the pits and the weather and stuff like that. So for those reasons, I am going to go with Heat. I do think I have more to explore in that game still, and I'm kind of ready to explore that. So we'll go over to Daniela.
I think this is a tough one as well, because I do think that both of them have a lot to, again, still discover. And I want to like Heat. I want to understand the curves and, deal with that in my own time. And like David said, I want to explore. I think the base game comes with 4 different maps. So there's more angles and curves and things to attack there. I think the hand management of it all, and I think you could really, really learn to play Heat very well. Cascadia, replayability. I know what Chris was saying earlier about the types of different cards you can bring out and the different animals and the maps that you can make and how far they can go. I don't know. I feel this is tough.
The number is like 3,000 something.
Yeah. What was that math again? This is tough. I mean, I'm just going to say for time's sake, I'm going to go with Heat just because I really do want to like that game because I do like the theme and the mechanics overall. So, Chris, how about you?
Yeah, even though I was doing the math earlier and I think there's more combinations on Cascadia, I'm going to go back to what David mentioned, that there's other things that you can throw in there as optional modules that put a lot of replayability into Heat. I still think Cascadia has a lot. The reality, though, is even though I didn't mention it last time, some of those scoring are kind of samey for the different ones. So I'm going to go with Heat as well, which is a clean sweep for Heat and replayability. And once again, we have Cascadia at 2, Heat at 2, and it all comes back to which game was more fun. So we go to the fun factor, Heat versus Cascadia. Does anybody want to go first on that one?
I'll take it.
Okay.
If nobody else wants
Thanks.
to take it. No problem. So, I'm just thinking about all the games I played with Heat and all the games I've played in my life of Cascadia. And when I think about the fun factor is there are games in Heat where the highs are really high, but the lows are really low. Like you could be playing that game and if you're out after the first kind of 3 turns just because either you got bad luck with the hand management or, the cards just weren't drawn in the right order and you couldn't mitigate it. Maybe some of you are yelling at me, oh, you can't mitigate it. And I get it. Maybe I haven't played it enough. But the highs and the lows, where Cascadia to me is always just really solid, right? I know it. I'm going in there. I'm always having fun. I've never really had a bad experience with Cascadia yet, and so for that reason, just for the steadiness that Cascadia always brings to the table, it's always fun for me. I've never had a bad experience with it yet, and so for that reason, the fun factor, I'm going with Cascadia. Chris, what do you think?
Well, what I think is I already know where Danielle is going with this one, just based on our experience. But yeah, I think for probably the same reasons maybe that Danielle is going to mention and that you kind of touched on, David, I'm going with Cascadia. I just feel like the fun factor, if you fall behind, just isn't there for Heat. If you're in it, it's fun. If you're not, it's not. And because there's no end game, it's who goes across first. And then once you see you're out, it's just, to me, that's just not fun anymore. You just kind of move on along. So I'm going to go with Cascadia, make it easier for Daniela, but you still have to make your vote.
No, I for all the reasons that you guys have just said, I agree with that. Again, I want to like Heat. I'm determined to play it more and to learn it, just for everybody again out there who might be yelling at us. But with Heat, again, there is some really, really huge at the end grand slam, put your face in the dirt type of thing when you're down and out, and for that I did not enjoy it. Everybody at the table knew I wasn't enjoying it, and that's never a fun time. And so Cascadia is gonna eke by on this because I think at the end, whenever we're all done with Cascadia and we're doing the points and we're totaling it up, there's always that calm of, oh, what did I do, or oh, I just didn't pull that right enough, or oh, I just didn't play this right enough. It's a little softer letdown, and I know one of my resolutions is to be a better loser, but we're working on it. And so Cascadia is a more of a subtle, hey, you should have done this instead of do that. So overall fun factor, I think everybody we've ever played with it has scratched their head at the end and go, oh, I really did like this game. So I think for the group purposes, Cascadia wins the fun factor for me.
All right, so Cascadia wins the fun factor, and despite the hotness that Heat carries around all the time, Cascadia takes them down. We know there's always going to be upsets in March Madness. It's happening in Meeple Madness as well. Our number 1 seed, Heat pedal to the metal, falls to our new Cinderella, Cascadia. All right, our next matchup has 2 games that we haven't talked about before on this episode, but we certainly talked about in our earlier episodes. This is Welcome to against the Quacks of Quedlinburg.
2 is a flip and right city building game that has you trying to design the perfect neighborhood. Each round, players choose one of the 3 pairs of cards defining a house number and a benefit. Players must manage the house numbers in an increasing sequence while also seeking to claim various bonuses along the way. There are 5 different scoring mechanisms, and the player who scores the most combined points earns the keys to the city as well as the victory. This is rated 7.5 on BGG, and you can listen to episode 8 if you'd like to hear more about that game. Quacks of Quedlinburg is a push your luck bag builder themed around potion making at a German carnival. Players draw ingredients from their bag one at a time, many of which impart special powers at some point during the round. The fuller your pot, the more points you score and the more ingredients you can add to your bag. If you pull too many cherry bombs, though, and your potion explodes, you're out of luck. After 9 rounds, the players with the most points wins the game. Quacks of Quedlinburg is a 7.8 on BGG, and you can listen to that on our previous episode 12.
All right, thanks, Daniela. So these are 2 relatively light games, pretty different, but still pretty light, and so not the same exact genre, but I think in the same, at least, rough category. We're going to start right off with theme and production. Welcome to versus the Quacks of Quedlinburg. Daniela, right back to you.
All right. I think both of these are done actually very well. I really like Welcome To, and I really like Quacks. I think they're both very thematic and stick to that theme. I think I'm gonna go with Welcome To on this because I just think overall I really like the idea of the neighborhood, the fences, the pools, everything that you are kind of dealing with in this game comes out and it's easy to understand and plan. And Quacks is the same way, but I really thematically like Welcome To. How about you, David?
Yeah, so Welcome To, when I look at the theme versus Quacks of Quedlinburg, I'm just looking at the shelf, which one do I gravitate towards? And to me, when I look at both of them, one's kind of a small box form, one's a little bit bigger. But for whatever reason, I think I would gravitate towards Quacks. I'm looking at them at my wall right now. Quacks kind of takes it for me. Houses, it's not the greatest theme. I do like some of the stuff that's in that game, as we'll talk about here later. But if I'm just going on pure theme, I think Quacks takes it a little bit more. I do like a little bit more fantasy. So that's where I'm going to kind of go with this one. Chris, what do you think? It's up to you.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Quacks as well. I mentioned when we talked about this on our last episode that I really like, the concept of magic and working that into a board game. I also think that from a production standpoint, Welcome To was okay. I think the art was actually really neat on Welcome To once we started realizing all the little Easter eggs that were built in there. But I like the art on Quacks as well. I'm gonna go with Quacks, which means Quacks takes theme and production and takes the early lead over Welcome To. But let's go to mechanisms next. Again, a couple of very different games. David, you touched on them. One's a bag builder, one's a flip and right. Which way are you going here for mechanisms?
It's an easy one for me. I'm just gonna say Quacks. I like bag builders, and even though I think for what it does, Welcome To does a really good job, but I'm always gonna pick a bag builder. I think over flip and right. I'm gonna go back to Chris and throw it at him.
Yeah, we'll knock this one out relatively early. I'm going with Quacks as well. There's not a lot of bag builders out there. There's becoming more, but there's a lot of flip and rights. And I think the mechanisms are okay in Welcome To. I enjoy them, but Quacks, that pulling that piece out of the bag and the excitement that comes with it. I'm just going to go with Quacks, Danielle.
All right, I'm going to go with this one and say Quacks as well. It reminds me again of Orleans, how we kind of play, and it's a little chancy. You kind of know what's in there, but you don't really know. Versus the flip and right for the mechanisms of this game. Just overall, it's more fun to play the bag building games for me. So that's going to be it.
All right, so Quacks has a clean sweep on mechanisms. Takes a 2-0 lead here so far over Welcome To. Let's go to value for your time. I'll kick that one off. I'm actually going to go with Welcome To on that one. I think it's a relatively quick game. I've actually played Welcome To on BGA a lot, and you can knock that game out really fast. I think they're both good. I'm going with Welcome To. We'll see how it pans out. David.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Welcome To on value for time. I think it's just a really quick game. It's a game that, I will play when I want something to start off a night, just to get our brains kind of working. I think Quacks is a little bit longer as an opening game. They're kind of both in that same gear. It's like when I bring them to the table, it's opening night. Which one do I want to play? I guess it depends a lot of times on the second game. If it's really hard or complicated, do we need more time? But I do think Welcome To plays well, value for time. And I also think, you can play with a lot more players as far as that goes. So it's a one that I never have to worry about player count. Could play, 1 player to 100 players. So I could just pull it out and I know right away it can play whoever comes to the game night that night. Going over to Daniela.
even though I'm going to lose this category, I'm going to say Quacks, just because I think when we're doing this simultaneous play, both of these games kind of have that with it. Sometimes Welcome To can seem a little bit like, all right, are you done? Are you done putting your houses? Are you done making your fence? Are you done doing this? Are you done doing that? I think with Quacks, everybody's pulling and you're pulling. You're really generally pretty close to each other when that simultaneous play ends, and then you're going through that scoring mechanism at the end of each round, and it's quite fast. So for me, value for time, I just feel like we get through Quacks a little bit easier versus kind of the hurry up and wait with Welcome To.
All right, so even though Daniela went with Quacks there, Welcome To wins the category and at least stays alive here. Quacks is up 2-1 over Welcome To. We're going to move into replayability, and I'm going to kick it right back to Daniela.
All right, so replayability here. We've talked before about Quacks and how there's something to discover, but I think it might end at a certain point. I know there's different expansions you can add on to it, and maybe there is more to discover, but just talking base game, I'm actually going to go with Welcome To on this, because I think that with just what you get with that base game as well, there's a lot to it, and you can always draw a different neighborhood or a different fence, or you can find, like David had mentioned, or maybe Chris mentioned, but there are different Easter eggs, and then you can use those Easter eggs to play a different type of game in them as well. And so it seems like there's just a lot in that box for what it is. So that's my 2 cents. So David, how about you?
Yeah, and just to mention, those Easter eggs were from a little bit of an expansion just for the dry erase boards, but I still agree with what you're saying. You can definitely mix it up there. Quacks, replayability, we haven't gotten really to the expansions, right? And so, if I'm just basing it off of base game, I mean, it's a toss-up to me, but I'm going to have to give the little edge to Quacks, because I do think that there are different modules that you can bring out in the base game itself, where you're doing the different ingredients and they can represent different things. So, I think for that very reason, I'm going to go with Quacks on the replayability of base game. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was hoping you would go to Welcome To, just so that my vote wouldn't be the difference, because I'm not sure where I want to go either. But I think I'm going to end up ultimately going with Quacks, only because Welcome To, I've played a lot of it, but I also feel like as I play it, it gets relatively same. And okay, now I do this, and now I'm going to do that, etc. Quacks, I think, can get that way. I'm not going to go through the math of, there's 215 chits in the game.
Thank you.
But I'm going to go with Quacks. So Quacks wins that category as well. Let's finish it off with Fun Factor, Quacks versus Welcome To. I'll start us off on this one, and we've talked in the last episode about Quacks and just how much fun it was to pull those chits out of there, especially, we talked, David, you were pulling the chits out. You couldn't even look at them. We're all laughing at it. I'm going to go with Quacks. We'll see where things land, but to me, Quacks takes it hands down. Daniela.
Yeah, hands down, Quacks is going to win this category for me. It's fun every single time we bring it to the table. Every single time that we're pulling out of the bag, someone's always going to explode or try and hold back or say, I should have done more. Welcome To is just more of a mild game. You sit around, you play it, you smoke a cigar, whatever. I mean, that's just kind of what it is, the Americana version of it. So it's like, whatever. So David, how about you?
I'm going to vote with you guys on this one. I'm also going to go with Quacks of Quedlinburg for the win. Although I will challenge anybody that's listening to us, if we can get 100 players playing Welcome To, I might change my vote for Fun Factor, but I kind of want to see, if we brought 100 people into a room, at the church or something else, and we're all playing Welcome To, maybe I would change my vote. But for right now, it's Quacks until that happens.
Yeah, we need to do that at some point just to see if we can pull it off. Even if we don't get 100, how many can we get?
Yeah, there'll be another New Year's goal. That'll be great.
All right, so Quacks of Quedlinburg takes the Fun Factor and also wins 4-1 in our first blowout of the tournament here, taking out Welcome To and moving on to the Final Four. All right, so in our next matchup, we have the number 3 seed, Trekking the World, going up against the number 6 seed, The Crew, Mission Deep Sea.
Trekking the World is a set collection and contract fulfillment gateway game. Players move around a map of the world collecting souvenirs for game endpoints. Players also collect Trek cards, which they use to move around the board, but also to claim destination cards, representing visits to famous landmarks around the globe. Players score points from their collected souvenirs from destination cards they've claimed, and by collecting the last souvenir in a region, or through shared goals. The player with the most points wins the game. Currently, it's rated a 7.1 on BGG, and it was our winner of episode number 6. It's going up against The Crew Mission Deep Sea, which is a cooperative trick-taking game with 32 different missions, each one increasing in difficulty. Players work together with limited communication capabilities to accomplish their task in a given hand. If you're successful, you move on to the next mission. If not, re-deal the cards and try it again. Complete as many missions as you want and pick up where you left off for the next time you want to play. The Crew Mission Deep Sea comes in at an 8.2 on BGG, and it was our winner of episode number 3.
All right, thanks, David. So 2 very different games, again, going up against each other. So this one should be interesting as well. Theme and production is our first category. David, you described the games. Why don't you tell us what you think about theme and production?
You know, I look at both of them on the table. I think about all the different kind of cards that The Crew has versus Trekking the World with all the different types of components. And for whatever reason, when I just think about table presence and kind of the production value I'm getting and kind of value for my money, I am going to go with Trekking the World here. It might be not the most popular pick, but I think that, you know, thematically, everything just makes sense with that game. And I feel like the components are really good. I feel like it has a strong table presence, and I like traveling. So I'm going to go with that one over The Crew Mission Deep Sea. I'm going to kick the next one off to Daniela.
All right. So as far as theme and production, I agree with what David had said. I will say I love the Easter eggs in the Crew games. I think they are super interesting. I love the Deep Sea one and the Mission Space one that we did as well. Very, very cool because I like space and I liked a lot of the sea things that they had on those as well. But I think, you know, again, as David said, kind of the table presentation and all of the different cards on the locations for Trekking the World, I was really interested in those, and I really just I love traveling. I like the idea of that, so I'm going to go with trekking. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with trekking as well. I agree with the Easter eggs. I think for what it is, the producers did very well with putting all those Easter eggs in there. And hey, it's a card game, but the cards are pretty cool, right? But in the end, I feel like maybe the themes are a little bit pasted on there in the Crew, right? Do you really feel like you're down in the sea or trying to find the elusive Planet 9? No. Whereas trekking, you are moving around the world, and from a production standpoint, I remember us sitting 5 people around a table, and I was all the way across the table from those destination cards. I could tell what they were. I was, a certain point from the journey cards, I could tell what they were, and so I thought the production worked really well there. So it's going to be a clean sweep for Trekking the World on theme and production. Let's move into mechanisms. Daniela.
All right, so I don't know if we've fully discussed this yet or how long ago it's been, but with the trick-taking games, you really have to know what you're doing with a game like that. Trekking is a little bit more of intro game. It's a little bit easier. You got 3 cards in front of you. You're picking what you can do, and then you have like 2 to 3 choices on what you're doing on each round type of thing. Super simple to learn. Even though I want to learn more of the cooperative trick-taking games, and I really want to find that Planet 9 or wherever it is, you got to play that with the right people, and I'm sure both of you hate playing with me on that game, so I'm going to go with Trekking the World on that, just because for me and my purposes, I like those mechanisms better. David, how about you?
Yeah, so in mechanisms, I am a trick-taking person. I like playing trick-takers. I do think, about, what does Trekking the World bring to the table as far as mechanisms. A lot of them are very basic. I think what it does well, but I don't think I'm going to give it the edge over kind of the OG of, co-op trick takers, which is the Crew. I think the Crew did something really unique when it comes to trick taking, and I think the mechanics are good. So going to Chris.
Yeah, I'm going with the Crew as well. Just that concept of, hey, it's a cooperative trick taker, right? Blow your mind right off the bat. Someone that oh yeah, I play trick takers all the time. Is this you playing on your own or with a partner? No, we're all playing together, right? We all win or lose together. Blow your mind right out. So I agree. Mechanisms for trekking, they're all good. They work well. They're pretty simple. And I want to correct one thing that Daniela said. I enjoy playing the Crew with you. I think it's fun to help someone learn that mechanism. And then I would think if we played that enough, you'd be, I think the Crew can help you become a really good trick-taking player because you have to, forces you to think a certain way.
Yeah. So, I think I was doing good by the time we played like 2-3 times.
Okay, we'll let you keep on.
All right. Okay. No one else spoke. Wah, wah.
So the Crew wins that category of mechanisms over Trekking the World 2-1. It is now 1-1 in the overall competition, and we're moving into value for your time. Daniela.
So I'm actually going to go with the crew here because you can play as long as you want or as little as you want with these games. You can go and play different missions. You can start and stop at a certain time, whatever you want. I thought that was very cool. I know we got to a couple points and we were like, oh, let's skip that mission. Let's try the next one, see if we can get it. So I think for whatever time you may have, it could be useful. Trekking the World, it's a little slower paced. It's a little, you need time to play it. You need time to set it up. You need time to bring it all out. So it's not that it's a bad thing, but to me, Trekking the World's kind of like sit down, have a campfire, and bring it out and sing Kumbaya and play Trekking the World while listening to a fantastic Melodice playlist with it. So, Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going with the crew as well for the reasons that you mentioned. You can play it as short or as long as you want to, but also because honestly, trekking, I think it's almost too much of a gateway game for me at this point. I think we compared it to Ticket to Ride, and I said at the time I would choose any Ticket to Ride other than the one we paired it up against over it, because I do think that Trekking the World might just be a little bit too simple for me, and for the amount of time that it took, I would much rather play the crew. David, how about you?
Yeah, so when I think about value for time, I also think about the setup. And, with the crew, the setup really isn't that bad. It's really fast. Obviously, you're only using cards. When I think about the setup for Trekking the World, and normally I'm setting up the games because it's at my house, there is quite a bit of setup because you have to put pieces all over that map. And for that reason, I am going to go with the crew. I think it's a better value for your time. Like Daniela was saying, you can pick it up, stop it, and keep going. And, for those reasons, value for time, the crew.
All right, so a clean sweep for the crew on value for your time. We'll move on to replayability. I'll start. I'm actually going to go with the crew on this one. I'm not sure if I've convinced myself of that, but I really don't know that the crew is winning because of the replayability of the crew, other than I feel like trekking would get the same for me really, really fast. And I'm still finding myself being called back to play the crew. So I'm going to go with the crew. I'll kick it over to David.
Yeah, so because we're reviewing the crew mission Deep Sea in particular, I think that the replayability is just way better over the crew Search Your Planet 9, I think is what the original one was called. I just think with the variable mission cards that are in there, you're always getting something different to kind of pop up. So even though you're doing the same mission, what actually happens on the table and kind of what you're competing with, I feel like is just it's just the replayability is a lot greater on that game. Trekking, I do think, there's some replayability there, but once you learn the core mechanisms in that game, you really get it down. I think you're going to want to move on fast. I do think it's a great game to dip your toes in, but you're going to want to move on from it, and there's not much there after you can figure out that puzzle. So I'm going to go with the crew mission Deep Sea on this one for replayability. To Daniela.
All right, I'm actually going to go with Trekking the World due to the fact that I think once you find what you're looking for, sure, you can replay it and you can do that again, but you've kind of already found it. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever found it and if they're just done and they pack it up and they put it away. But for me, Trekking had so many cool cards. One of my biggest gripes with Trekking is that all those cards don't come out. You get a couple of the cards of the locations that you're trying to get. And for me, I want more of those cards to come out. I think that there's still a lot to see there. I think it's a little bit, again, there's not too much out there, but I don't know. I just feel like for me and my replayability, I want to play that. I actually did buy Trekking the National Parks. I have not played it yet. I'm trying to get to that, but I don't know. I'm going to go with Trekking the World for that.
All right. The crew still wins the category, though, over Trekking the World. The final one is the fun factor. David, we'll kick to you.
This one's interesting. I just think about my thoughts about both games, kind of my plays with them. Did I have fun? Did I not? I still go back to the very first time I played the crew. The fun factor that was there, kind of my mind being blown by a trick-taking co-op game. I just think that the fun factor for me is just there. Where trekking, I do have fun with it, but not as much as fun as my memories with the crew. And so therefore I'm going to go with the crew. I'm going to kick this one over back to Chris.
Yeah, I'm going with the crew as well. I'm remembering the times that I've played this both with this group as well as with my family, and just especially when you start to get up into the more challenging ones, and you finally pulled that one off, or you almost did. For me, as a trick taker, there's a lot of fun into that challenge around that whole trick taking piece. So I'm going to go with the crew. Daniela.
I agree with what the guys have just stated, and I think that if you are into trick taking, this is probably a really, really great game. And kind of what David had said before of it's one of the first trick taking games that kind of blew his mind and just had fun with it. However, for me and being new into gaming at this point, I'm going to go with Trekking the World just because I want to be able to pull this out and have fun with other skill set level people like me, I guess, on this game who are just a little bit more intro into learning. So that's where I'm going to land.
All right, thanks, Daniela. The crew still wins that category and takes it 4-1 over Trekking. And again, another blowout. What's really interesting to me here, though, and something maybe the listeners can consider, David and I are both big trick-taking players, and 4 of our 5 votes went to the crew in this case. Daniela's more of that newer player, not a big trick-taker, and 4 of her 5 votes went to Trekking the World. So this is a great example of it really all depends on where your groove is. But the tournament doesn't care what your groove is, it just care who wins, and the crew certainly did that. Trekking the World missed its flight. The crew moves on to the final 4. All right, so we have 3 games in the final 4. We have 1 more yet to get there. It's a Wonderful World survived its first round to make it here to take on the number 2 seed of the entire tournament, Planet Unknown.
Planet Unknown is a space-themed polyomino tile-laying game, and you're laying tiles on a planet, and each tile has terrains depicted on it that allow you to move up on 5 different tech tracks that give you points and otherwise help you in a variety of ways. You score points for each row or column that you fill on your planet from your tech tracks and from various personal and group bonus cards, and the player with the most points wins the game. This is currently 8.0 on BGG, and we talked about this in our very first episode.
All right, thanks, Daniela. So again, Planet Unknown making its first appearance, coming in pretty strong against It's a Wonderful World. We'll talk about theme and production first. Daniela, since you described it for us, give us your thoughts here.
All right, so theme and production, I actually love both of these. I like that futuristic. I like the space theme of Planet Unknown. I think overall, just the theme and production, I really like Planet Unknown. I love all the little space rovers. I love the asteroids and comets and the tiles that are come with it. I like the Lazy Susan idea that you can spin that around. It's very, very cool. So I'm gonna go with Planet Unknown. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Planet Unknown. I had mentioned in a couple episodes ago, this was one of my cardboard crushes, so maybe not surprising, but I like space-themed games as well. It's got that Lazy Susan, which is, as far as I know, relatively unique to the board gaming world. I don't know if it shows up anywhere else. It probably will in the future if it doesn't. I do think It's a Wonderful World has a really good theme and production too, and I think if you were saying, well, hey, value for your money, it's a different story given the cost, but just straight out, base box in the game, it's Planet Unknown for me. David?
Yeah, I'm going to make it really easy. One has really good space. One has okay space. No, just messing. Planet Unknown takes it for me on this one, too. I just think about all the little rovers like Daniela was talking about, just the components in the game. Everything makes sense. Everything looks good on the table. There is that Lazy Susan. It is a memorable thing when you see it on the table. So for that reason, I am going to go with Planet Unknown for theme and production.
All right, so a clean sweep there for Planet Unknown. Let's move on to mechanisms. Planet Unknown versus It's a Wonderful World. David, back to you.
Yeah, so with Planet Unknown, we have simultaneous play, again, being introduced, as we're picking out tiles to lay down on our board, versus It's a Wonderful World, where we're doing some drafting and cards. When I think about it, just kind of how both mechanisms kind of work in the game, I'm going to have to go with Planet Unknown on this one. I just do have a heart for simultaneous play that's done well. And I think Planet Unknown does it at a very high level. And I think that everybody, can play different corporations and stuff like that too with the mechanisms, and that, you could have somebody that can play on an easier mode than somebody else. And I like that mechanism as well, where, somebody could just have a basic corporation and somebody else could be playing across from them, having a really complex corporation, and maybe even the odds up, as some play very differently than others. And for that, alone too, with the different ways you can play this game, and at the different levels that people can sit at the table and still play the same game, I'm going to have to go with Planet Unknown. I'm going to send this one over to Daniela.
All right, yeah. So for the mechanisms of these games, I like them both a lot. I really like the set collection and the tiling of the wonderful. It's a Wonderful World. I liked building that out. I like having my own little space, and the same thing kind of overflows, but does it even better is Planet Unknown for me, because I really like placing tiles, and I like building cities in space and rovers and all this stuff that has to do with the Planet Unknown. I like a lot of the other games that have these polyomino Isle of Cats, all that kind of stuff. Because if you know me, I like to place tiles, and I like puzzles, and I like that kind of thing. So for me, Planet Unknown takes this. How about you, Chris?
All right, I'm going to surprise myself here, and I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful World, simply for something that we talked about during the episode, the fact that you're building those cards or those production units, and they're going to generate resources for you, but they only generate them at certain times. And so if you're generating something that actually already happened that round, it doesn't happen until the next round. I know it sounds kind of simple, but it kept burning me every single time we played it. I think it's a relatively straightforward mechanism, but just that little twist got me every time. I love Planet Unknown, but I'm just going to have to give it to It's a Wonderful World there for my vote, but my vote doesn't really matter because Planet Unknown already got 2 votes, and it takes that category as well. Let's go to value for your time. Back to Daniela.
All right, so value for your time. I feel like Wonderful World is quite quick from when we've played it. I feel like Planet Unknown takes quite a long time for when we've played it. I'd like to play it again at different player counts and stuff, but I think for value for your time, I'm going to go with Wonderful World because of getting in, playing, and getting out. Again, it's 4 rounds. I wish it was more, but you know where you're at, you know where you stand, and when it's going to be over. Planet Unknown, it's all based on who can't fit that last tile. So that's going to be my vote. How about you, David?
Yeah, for me, again, this is an easy one for me. I think about all the different times I play both of these games, but Planet Unknown, it always plays in the same amount of time. I played it with just me and my wife. I played it at a 6-player count as well. It's about 45 minutes no matter what I do. But when I think about, It's a Wonderful World, I still think, for whatever reason, every time I play it, I still think the ending is just a little weird to me all the time. I feel like by the time I finally get my engine built up and actually can use it, it's just over. I know that's how a lot of engine building games are, but for whatever reason, It's a Wonderful World just isn't satisfying when I play it, and I don't feel like I get my value for time. It's almost like I wish there was like something, but the ending is always just weird to me. It just never sits right. And for that reason, I'm going to say Planet Unknown takes it for me. I'm going to send this one over to Chris.
All right, I'm going to go with Planet Unknown as well, simply because I've got to go with the facts. I think I mentioned on Cardboard Crushes that I had played it at the time 70 plus times on BGA. I'm up to over 100 at this point. So that just tells me it's worth my time. I keep going back to it. It's a Wonderful World's on BGA as well. I don't keep going back to that. So I've got to go with Planet Unknown, which means Planet Unknown will take that one as well. We'll move on to replayability. Daniela.
All right, so replayability, I'm going to go with Planet Unknown just for the simple fact that every single time that game comes out, you've got different cards that you can play with your faction. You can play a simple game. You can play a harder game. You can, depending on who's picking what up at the time, you can pick up different tiles. It can be different all the time. You never know if you're going to have a terrible comet asteroid game. You never know if you got a good rover who can clean them up for you. It's just every single time I played it, I played it a little bit differently. And so I really like that about that game. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, for me, it's Planet Unknown as well. They've got so much just in that base box, so many different planet and corporation combinations that you can go to, and they are very, very different. I mentioned I play this a lot. I play everything it throws at me, and if you pick a different company or faction, it's playing completely different. I think it's great replayability. It's definitely Planet Unknown for me. David.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep. The replayability factor of Planet Unknown, I think, is still through the roof. I can't wait to get my hands on the expansion that's coming out hopefully soon here. But just the base game itself, with all those different corporations, just the way you can play it, I still feel like, if you add newbies in, they can still have a good time while you have a tougher challenge. I don't think many games offer that. And so for that reason, again, I think it just head over heels actually on this one for Planet Unknown.
All right, so a clean sweep on that one for Planet Unknown as well. The final one is the fun factor. I'll kick this one off. I'm unsurprisingly going with Planet Unknown again. I have a lot of fun with this. To me, it's when you're playing it here on a table, the Lazy Susan is fun. Again, the fact that we're all taking our turn simultaneously helps as well. But that's the case for It's a Wonderful World too. But when I think of which one do I have more fun playing, it's Planet Unknown for me. So I've got to go that way. David.
Yeah, there's a number 2 seed for a reason. It's next to Planet Unknown. And for that reason, not only for that reason, but the fun factor, there's a reason why I think this game has so much hype behind it. I don't think that every game that has hype behind it actually deserves it, but this one I think does. I think it does what it does well, and I think that there is something for everybody at this game, whether you're a veteran of board gaming or you're a newbie to board gaming. you're just going to have fun playing this with other people. And so for that reason, I don't even think it's in the same realm. I do like It's a Wonderful World, but there's a number 2 seed. It's Planet Unknown. It's taking it from me to Daniela.
Yeah, I think I like It's a Wonderful World way more than you guys as we're playing it. I will go with Planet Unknown on this because I do like the Polyomino game. Played out for me, personal fun, much more. I think if you sat at a table with this, again, it's more interaction. The fun factor needs to be there for me personally and with a group of people. When we play It's a Wonderful World, there's not too much interaction there. It's a little bit simultaneous play. It's a little just, kind of doing your own thing, and you're pulling your own cubes. You're not really doing much with other people. So I think overall, just having fun, sitting down, playing with other people, it's going to be Planet Unknown.
All right, so another clean sweep for Planet Unknown, and just an all-out beatdown for Planet Unknown, winning that Battle of the Funnest over It's a Wonderful World to take the final slot in our Final Four. So, guys, where we're at right now, I just mentioned we're at our Final Four. We've got 4 games left. We've got the number 2 seed, Planet Unknown, the number 4 seed, the Quacks of Quedlinburg, the number 6 seed, the Crew, Mission Deep Sea, and the number 9 seed, Cascadia. Any thoughts on that? Is this where you thought would be at the Final Four? Anybody that didn't make it that maybe you thought would?
Ooh, this is interesting. I love bidding games, so Modern Art losing to It's a Wonderful World was a shocker to me a little bit on how that came out. But I think It's a Wonderful World deserves its spot. I'm not as surprised about Cascadia. I think Cascadia is just it's just so good. I mean, I don't know. I can see it. It's a classic for a reason. And it's one of the classics that I actually like to play. There are classics that, we have building blocks, I call them, like in the board game, sphere. But Cascadia is one that I like pulling out to the table. I actually enjoy it. The other ones I will play, but this one I actually want to play. So I think that's different. Danielle, anything that stands out to you?
Nothing that overtly stands out. I think that there's a lot on here that we all like and don't like about these games, but I think it's coming down to just our personal styles, which I'm hoping you guys see actually come out through this episode of what we do and don't like, and just for our different personalities and what we kind of like with as being like the collector and someone who's more of an introvert and someone who's newer at the games. I'm hoping that you guys all kind of take from this what you can, and that you will go and just try these games. And then maybe with these top 4, you'll say, hey, I'm going to go try those this year and see what you guys think of the playability too. Cause I'm really interested to hear what other people think of how this is panning out. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think I would call out Modern Art. I thought that would win against It's a Wonderful World. Other than that, I think these have kind of, it's been chalk for me that, hey, if I would have filled out my bracket, this is how I would have thought it would have gone. Other than that, we'll see how it goes from here. But the 2 games that I thought would be in the championship are still alive. So we'll see how that finishes. All right, well, let's just get into it, guys. It is the Final Four. We're going to start with Cascadia against the Quacks of Quedlinburg. Let's get right into it. Theme and production. Danielle, I'm going to start with you.
I'm going back with Quacks again. I'm not going to explain too much here. I'm just going to pick my picks. Chris, what do you got?
Well, I didn't want you to come to me that fast because I don't know where I'm going to go yet.
Come over here then.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Quacks. When you think about themes and production, looking at these 2, Magic over...
Elk.
Yeah, Magic over Elk, I guess. There you go. I'm going with Quacks.
Okay, I'm going to shock you. I'm going with Cascadia over this one. I think that I do like the wooden tokens that I'm pulling out of the bag versus the cardboard ones, and I think it just feels a little bit better. So for that reason, I'm going to go on this one with Cascadia.
Well, it doesn't matter, David, because we both voted for Quacks, and Quacks takes the first category. The next one, though, is mechanisms. Again, Cascadia versus Quacks. Back to you, David. Kick us off.
This one's a lot harder. I do like a bag puller, and I do like what Cascadia does and how simply it does it. Ooh, tough. I think the wind today for this episode is blowing toward Cascadia for me. Can't believe I'm saying that because I'm a true believer in bag builders and I want to see more of them. But I think Cascadia, just with the simplicity and what it does well, it just does it, in my estimation, pretty perfectly. I'm going to go over to Daniela next.
I'm actually going to choose Quacks here just because it is more chancy. I know Cascadia, you are pulling and you're laying some stuff out and you can't totally manipulate it, but you have some choice there as well. Quacks, you're either blowing your pot or you're not. And for me, I like that bag pulling mechanism, even though I really do like Cascading that tiling as well. So how about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think the chancy piece is when you said that, I was having a hard time figuring out what I wanted to go with. But when you talked about the chancy piece of Quacks, I would rather kind of control my own destiny. I like a little bit of chance, but that threw it over. As soon as you said that, I said, yeah, it's Cascadia for me. So I'm going to go with Cascadia, which means Cascadia ties it back up, wins mechanisms, and we are now at 1-1 in this particular battle. Value for your time, I'm going to kick that one off. I'm going with Cascadia. I think it's a relatively quick game. It's fun. Quacks is fun too, but for whatever reason, when I think of this, it's just a no-brainer for me. It's Cascadia. Daniela.
Cascadia is going to win this one too for me because of the simplicity of pulling it out, getting it on the table, playing it, and then potentially playing it again, back-to-back games. I think that's super important, especially when you're trying to play some games and get some plays in. How about you, David?
Yeah, that's a really good thing you just said there, Danielle. It's making me rethink my thought process here a little bit. I'm also going to go with Cascadia too. I didn't think about the factor that normally when I pull this game out, a lot of times I am running it back-to-back. I occasionally do that with Quacks, probably not as often, probably because I'm teaching new people. So one game is like, oh, that's my brain is blown with these modern board games, but they had fun. But value for your time. Sometimes I think in Quacks you can have a bad experience for some reason. I've seen games where somebody kind of does follow behind, even though there's a lot of mechanics to catch up. And so so even though they might be having fun, sometimes they're just so far behind that they're not competitive in the scoring. Where Cascadia, I always feel like just because of how it scores and how it plays, is that everybody still thinks they're in it, even if they're not, but they don't know it until we score it at the end. So I think that helps a lot with teaching new players and keeping them interested in the game, knowing that they're not 25 points behind everybody else.
All right, so a clean sweep for Cascadia in value for your time. Replayability. Daniela, back to you again.
Ooh, so replayability, that's tough. I think both of these are just, again, I think they're really fantastic games. I think they're here in this category for a reason. Our top four, final four. Replayability. For me, if it's a choice and everything's set up on the table, I want to play Quacks. I'm just going to go with what I think. I like them both, but for me, what I want to play thematically and overall, just the style of game, it's going to be Quacks. David's shutting his eyes, so I'm going to go to Chris.
I feel like Quacks can get a little bit samey. I always keep it quick. I'm going to go with Cascadia there for replayability. And I keep going back to it. So that to me says it's very replayable. I talked before, about the different combinations. Quacks has a lot too. Cascadia still takes it for me. David. You're the deciding factor on this category. Replayability.
I shouldn't have closed my eyes earlier. I should have just went first. This one's so tough. I like both these games a lot. I think about the replayability. In my collection right now, I do have the Mega Box version of Quacks. And because I have the Mega Box version of Quacks, I don't get it to the table as often as I do Cascadia. And I think if I had the smaller version, I think this answer might be different. So I'm just basing off my personal collection and how much I play each game. And for that reason, I'm going to have to go with Cascadia because I do have more plays. I think it is the box factor. So if you're listening out there and you print Quacks, can you please print it in a smaller box with all the components of the Mega Box? Thanks.
All right, so Cascadia takes that category too. And sometimes in the middle of a tournament, you kind of know who's going to win the game, but you got to play it out anyway just to see what's going to happen. So let's finish it off with the fun factor. I'll kick it off. I'm actually going to go with Quacks. I really enjoy Cascadia, and so I think if you ask me which one would I play, if I had to choose them, I'd actually choose Cascadia. If you ask me, though, which one I actually have more fun when I play it, I think I'd have to say Quacks just because of the crazy things that can happen. So I'm going to go with Quacks. David, back to you.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Chris on this one. I'm going to go with Quacks. I think the tension is hard to replicate. I don't feel it as Cascadia, probably because I don't see the scoring until the end. But with Quacks, I do feel more of the tension when it is close at the end. It's always a nail biter. Am I going to pull a chip out? Is somebody else not going to pull one out and screw me over? And so for that reason, I just don't think you could mitigate that tension, that fun factor that's in Quacks. And I like it for that reason. To Daniela.
Yeah, for both of the reasons the guys just said, I'm going to go with Quacks as well. When we are playing through the game, Quacks is one of those things that it's a goofy theme. I think that comes out in the game that we're playing. It's goofy as we're playing it. So overall fun is going to be Quacks for me. Cascadia is just a tad too serious, not like as much interaction. Maybe the theme on that could be a little different, but I don't hate it. So Quacks.
All right, so Quacks takes that category in a clean sweep. Cascadia wins it overall, though, but really, really close. If you look at the individual votes, Cascadia got 8 votes, Quacks got 7. It all comes down to who won the most categories. Same result, though, in that case. Cascadia takes down Quacks and makes it into the championship round. Who will it face, though? What we have here is The Crew, which was our number 6 seed, against Planet Unknown, which came in as a pretty heavily favored number 2 seed. Let's see where it takes us. Theme and production. Daniela.
All right, theme and production. Ooh, I'm gonna hit Planet Unknown on this. Even though I'm struggling getting it out, I think it's a fairly easy choice for me, just with the whole space theme, and just in the amount of really, really cool components that come with the game. So that's going to be it for me. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm definitely going with Planet Unknown. I think it's a great production if you've got it on the table. I think the theme is really good too, though, and it just speaks to me. Planet Unknown, I think easily actually over The Crew. David.
Yeah, this one's not even hard for me. I'm going to go with you guys, Planet Unknown, for all the reasons you said.
All right, Planet Unknown, clean sweep on theme and production. Next we go to mechanisms. Again, 2 very different games. A polyomino tile laying game against a cooperative trick taker. So this would be an interesting one for us to wrap our heads around. David, I'm going to go to you first. Mechanisms.
Ooh, this one is tough for me. I like mechanisms in both of these games very much, but I'm going to give it to The Crew. Just what I've seen, co-op trick taker, it's still in my mind as far as all the years since I played it. And just when I first saw it, it still stands out to me over all the games that I've played. It's just, one of those nuggets that stick with me. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with The Crew on this one. I'm going to kick it over to Daniela.
Yeah, even though I like co-ops, the trick-taking thing is still a little bit of a struggle for me in a learning area that I do want to eventually get better at. So for me, it's going to be Planet Unknown just because of the more individual polyomino style. I like that individually building up my board. So it's going to be Planet Unknown for me. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to go with The Crew, even though I really love Planet Unknown, and I have nothing against the mechanism whatsoever. In fact, I really love the mechanisms in Planet Unknown. I'm just giving The Crew the nod just because, to me, still that cooperative trick taker is just, it's unique, and it takes it for me. So The Crew will take that one. It's a 1-1 tie so far in this battle. Value for your time. Daniela.
Going to surprise you both, and I'm going to say The Crew because for all the reasons I said prior to, when you can just take it out, you can play as much as you want or as little as you want. Let's see, Planet Unknown is a little longer, even though I don't hate it. It's 45 minutes or something like that. It's great to play out if you got the time. But yeah, The Crew is going to be it for me. David.
Yeah, so value for my time, I get everything you're saying with The Crew. I'm actually going to go the opposite way from you, which might be surprising. I'm going to go with Planet Unknown on this one. I just like the simultaneous play. I think for what it does, you're going to get a game in an hour, and sometimes I'm just looking for that hour game, right? I don't necessarily want it to be 30 minutes. I don't want it to be an hour and a half. I want it to be an hour, and I don't want it to kind of have that flexibility of oh, is it going to be an hour this time or not? Every time I play it, it's always the same amount of time, around 50 minutes, 45 to 50 minutes every single time. And for that reason, I'm going with Planet Unknown. To Chris.
Yeah, I'm just going to stare off into space a little bit because I don't know where I want to go with this one, because I think it's 2 different things. The Crew, by all means, you can play it as short or as long as you want, and I think that's a really great aspect of that game. Hey, I just got 15 minutes, let's get through it. At the same time, if I said I'm going to play an hour playing both of these games, which one am I going to take more out of?
True.
And I compare them that way. I'm going to have to go with Planet Unknown, although you put The Crew in front of me, I'm playing it, right? I think one of the gaps in my gaming world is I just can't find enough people to play The Crew with, or maybe that I want to play The Crew with as well. So
you have to say nicer things to me.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. So Planet Unknown takes that category. Replayability, Daniela.
Replayability, again, for all the reasons I've said before, I'm going to give it to Planet Unknown, and I'm not really going to say much more. David.
Yes, it's a little bit harder decision than Daniela, but I'm going to have to echo what she says when she's right. Planet Unknown for me, for sure. Not much else to say there. To Chris.
Yeah, Planet Unknown for me as well. I do think, like any trick taker game, any hand you play is going to be different than the prior, but also it could be also very samey. Planet Unknown has all those different variations. Definitely Planet Unknown for me. Clean sweep for Planet Unknown. Let's go to the fun factor and finish that off. I'm going to go with Planet Unknown. I'll start that myself. Have a lot of fun playing that game. Again, over 100 plays on BGA. If we ever get at this table, I'm going to enjoy the heck out of it. It's Planet Unknown for me. David.
Fun factor, it's Planet Unknown for me. My only knock on it is please get that lid for that Lazy Susan ASAP. Thanks. To Daniela.
Yeah, Planet Unknown. We've had fun every single time that comes to the table. I think we're all in agreement that we enjoy playing it together, and I love the look of it at the end. So that's going to be it for me.
All right, so Planet Unknown takes that category and takes the overall Battle of the Funnest there 4-1 over the Crew and makes it into our finals. So in the finals, we have Cascadia, which came in as a 9 seed. Clearly, nothing wrong with my seeding. It's just, hey, there was some, there were some things going on that allowed it to get here. And then Planet Unknown, which I think coming in, we probably all felt had a really good chance of making the final. But now we have to make a decision. This is it. So this is the final thing. Usually, when you got to the championship game, what you'd have is about 6 hours worth of pomp and circumstance and talk leading up to it. We're not going to do that here at the Meeple Madness tournament. We're getting right into it. So Cascadia, number 9 seed versus Planet Unknown, the number 2 seed. Let's see where we end up, starting with theme and production. Daniela, coming to you first.
All right, theme and production. I'm going to just run through these again. I'm going Planet Unknown. David, how about you?
This one's actually a little tough for me, but at the end of the day, I think I'm going to give the edge to Planet Unknown. The theme and the production, they're both really good both at what they do, but Planet Unknown, just, it's space. To Chris.
Yeah, I'm going Planet Unknown as well. Number 1, because of space. Number 2, it's got that crazy but wonderful Lazy Susan. And I really like Polyomino tile laying games, which is probably coming in next time, but I just like the Polyomino, so that to me comes in with production. Planet Unknown sweeps that one. Let's go to mechanisms. I'll kick that one off since I already kind of tipped my hand. I'm going with Planet Unknown as well. I like those Polyomino tile laying games. Planet Unknown for me. Daniela.
Copying that, I agree with everything you just said. I love the Polyomino. That's it for me. David.
This one's actually tougher for me. I think both of them, you are laying tiles for both of these games. And you are putting stuff on these tiles for both of these games. And they are comparable in that respect. I know my vote doesn't matter, but I'm going to throw it to Cascadia on this one.
It does matter.
I'm going to throw it to the OG.
You matter.
Yeah, thanks, David. But once again, it doesn't matter because Planet Unknown takes that category. Let's move on. Value for your time. Planet Unknown versus Cascadia. David, back to you.
Oh, so I've been preaching this whole time. Planet Unknown, 45 to 50 minutes. Planet Unknown, 45 to 50 minutes. Doesn't matter the player count. But when I really think about the value for the time, I have sat at some of the games, even though there's the same amount of time, I have sat there, and maybe because I play this game often, I have sat there and had to wait for people. And with Cascadia, it's just really fast. In fact, I think it's sometimes too fast. I don't actually want to go yet. And people are like, I'm done, I'm picking, I'm done. And I'm like, I didn't even place this tile yet. And so for that reason, for my value for the time, I've never just had a bad experience with it, with Cascadia. I never looked at a clock. And so for that reason, I'm going to actually go with Cascadia on this one. This is tough for me, though. They're basically which way the wind is blowing for that particular day. I'm going to throw it over to Daniela.
So value for my time is going to be Cascadia because every single time we have played this, again, I keep saying with 1-2 new people or anything like that with a teach, we are running it back. We're playing it a couple times because people have enjoyed it. And that's really the valuable thing for me when I'm playing games is that people are enjoying themselves. Chris.
Yeah, I'm really glad those votes went that way because I didn't know what I wanted to do here. My vote doesn't matter, so I feel like David over here, but do I have to make a vote then?
Yes.
Yeah, I have to make a vote. I'm actually going to go with Cascadia as well. So clean sweep for Cascadia, even though I could go either way on that one. Replayability. Daniela.
So replayability after Chris's stats on Cascadia, there's many different ways, obviously, to skin the cat.
Yeah, I need the stats for Planet Unknown really quick. Can you calculate that?
I need the numbers.
I've played Cascadia more, but I think I'm going to give this to Planet Unknown because I really, really enjoy playing it. Sometimes when Cascadia comes out, I think I've just played it a lot lately, and not that I haven't not enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. It's just like I'd like to probably play Planet Unknown if given the chance, just because for me personally, I think there's a lot to discover. I want to see what these other planets and these other factions, board games, player boards do as well. So back to you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm going with Planet Unknown, despite the math I did earlier with Cascadia. I kind of admitted later on, but some of them are kind of the same. I think there's just a lot of differentiation that you can get just even if you're playing solo, just with combining different factions with different planets and all that. And then I think if you're playing with others and you have all those different goals that you're trying to do, it gets even more diverse. So I'm going with Planet Unknown. David, replayability.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep. I'm going to go with Planet Unknown on this one for the reasons you both said.
So Planet Unknown takes the clean sweep there. You can kind of hear the music playing. Well, not really because I haven't started it yet, but we got an idea who's going to win here. But let's finish it off with the fun factor, which is always an important consideration when you're playing a game. Our final two, Planet Unknown, Cascadia, I think both probably qualify for, hey, they're both pretty fun games. But David, if you had to pick one, what would you say?
Yeah, if these two are going head to head, the edge that takes it for me with the fun factor, and I do have a lot of fun playing both these games, but I feel like I can bring Planet Unknown and I could play it all the time, and I could choose what level I want to play at, no matter who's at that table with me. And, you know, I still think that's a unique concept. I don't see it a lot in games. I wish I saw it more, but, you know, just having newbies at the table, but I don't have to play at the same level as them. I can challenge myself at the same time and play a little bit differently than them. And, you know, it falls into some of the category of games I really like that do this, where, you know, you can play the same game, all have fun, all keep it close at the end, but we could play vastly different difficulty levels in the game at the same time. And for that reason, I'm going to give it to Planet Unknown for the fun factor, because I could have fun with anybody I bring it to the table with, regardless of their experience level. I'm going to go to Daniela next.
Yeah, so I love everything that David just said about Planet Unknown. I think that's all super valid. If it were me choosing, which it is me, choosing this game, I personally want to play Planet Unknown. However, when I'm thinking about where I'm at in my level and how I want so many more people to come into board gaming and into this community, and I want noobs all over the world to join hands and embrace this whole community, I'm going to go with Cascadia, because at the end of the day, I think that's one thing that people can come and see and sit down, understand it. They learn it. Like David had mentioned, I think a couple notes ago, you can play it super, super fast. And I remember I was drinking out of a fire hose the first time I played it, and it was so fast, but I got it by the time, you know, round 5 came around. I just think for the fun factor, I want other people in this game. I want them playing it. I want people to enjoy this community. And so I'm going to think of the greater noobs and say Cascadia. Chris, where are we landing?
Yeah, I think you both made really good points, and so it's another tough one, but I think it depends who's playing.
Yes,
right. I agree 100%. I think if it's newer folks to the gaming, Cascadia is going to be more fun for them. Planet Unknown though still takes it for me. It scratches every itch that I have. Planet Unknown is going to do it, which means it's going to take that category, and maybe unsurprisingly, Planet Unknown defeats Cascadia 4-1 and takes the championship in our Meeple Madness Tournament 2024. Well, it was a tough battle, but we survived, and so did Planet Unknown, our Meeple Madness champion. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to get in touch with us, email us at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com or at fifthmeeple on Instagram. Thanks for battling with us, and until next time, keep battling. We've enjoyed this episode, and if you want to get in touch with us, nope. That's not at all what I said we're starting with. David, I'm coming right back to you for necking. David, I'm coming right back to you for... I'm not coming back to you for necking.
I'm out.
Yeah. We were just talking about neck. Right. I'm going to take a long pause, but then edit it out later on. All right, so Quacks of Quedlinburg takes the fun factor, and we also have...
You have that.
Yeah. I also have something in my throat.
Is that a cat?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That's fine.
Sorry.
Who's number 3? We got to have to go
Really?
back.
You want to do some more?
No,
Really?
We'll have to do that next year.
Enough said.
All right.